Oh, I see.
It says it is.
It says it is on my screen.
Yeah.
I just started it.
Okay.
It said it on my screen when I joined.
Yeah.
So it currently shows both Sharon and Tarrant AgriLife are recording.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Fine.
Yeah, if you look under the participants, it'll show it's got the little red flashing dot for whoever's recording.
Say, I've got a question. Do we just have 30 days now to put on our time like that email said? Or is it
It's
45?
It's 45.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It used to be 30, and you know how it is trying to update stuff you wrote a long time ago and
Oh,
getting
sure.
it. But it's always good to ask.
But Sharon, what the question was, I mean, the concern was that it has to be, all has to be done within 45 days. Has to mean it has to be recorded and approved within 45 days. So if you wait 44 and a half days to get your stuff in, then whoever does the recording doesn't have any time. So they're trying to encourage people to do it within 30 days.
We are trying to encourage people. You are absolutely right.
Okay.
And I forgot to encourage those people.
Yeah. Okay.
And that might explain why Teresa did a lot of approvals of late approvals last year. We just looked through all that information they send us. I'm still thinking of announcements.
I went to the stock show on Saturday and staffed, quote unquote, the AgriLife booth. And
Okay.
I think I actually talked to 2 people at that booth. Now, the good news, we were right next to the Texas Farm Bureau, and they had live animals. So they attracted a lot of attention.
Okay.
So I went over there a lot and tried to encourage people to, you know, to learn a little bit about their county extension service. And most of them knew a whole lot more about whatever animals they were than I did. So they were.
Well, you know, everybody has a specialty.
Yep.
So.
But there was a good crowd.
Good. Well, I had good intentions, and then Omicron came up, and I'm babysitting that 2.5-year-old and 1-month-old 2 to 3 times a week, and I just said, I can't, you know.
Yeah.
I was the last person at my gym to take my mask off about 4 or 5, 6 months after everybody else. And board members, I have condensed the budget to 1 page, but since you haven't looked for my mistakes yet, and I'm well known for making mistakes, I'm not gonna flash it on the screen here today.
Okay.
Because as sure as I do, there'll be something wrong with it. So.
Oh, there. We got names finally.
Does anybody have any questions about the science fair? I know that it's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I asked the board if maybe they could sponsor a certain division or category. There's all kinds. There's also environmental sciences and goodness knows what else. Have you discussed this as a board, or
We have not had a chance to discuss that, Sandra. Could you send me the list of categories? And also, I don't remember when you sent the email just a few days ago that you mentioned that we could sponsor a category. I think you asked whether judging the science fair could be counted at, I'm looking at you in my screen, so I have to remember to look up here. whether it would count as volunteer service. And I think if I saw the list of categories, we could probably say time spent doing X, Y, and Z categories.
Okay,
Is that
yeah.
okay? Because
Uh,
a bunch of the categories aren't necessarily about
mhm,
the environment.
yeah. So, what is your email?
You can send it to president@ctmn.org. And remind me in that email when the science fair is so that I can
Mhm.
put it on the list high enough that we try to get it done. We try to look at it
Yeah,
in
because
plenty of time.
yeah, it's always like the sort of the Christmas rush with the science fair. Then suddenly everybody wakes up like, oh, it's a new year, and oh yeah, the science fair. And then, people get busy again and start emailing. And what was that guy's name again? And all of a sudden, it's like, make things work,
Yeah,
get things to work, and keep them working. So I'll send it to you.
thank
But if
you.
anybody would like to, help out or volunteer or donate, or it's all good. And another thing regarding volunteer hours, when is the last day to have the 40 required hours?
It's passed.
Oh,
Right. Now, are you this class? Are you class of 21 or are you from back in 2020?
no, 21.
Okay, well then you have until next December.
Oh, okay. For a moment,
Okay.
I thought like,
But
what?
to be
What are you-
but to be certified this year, the volunteer days have already passed.
Okay, got it. Yeah, yeah.
Some of us, it took a year for several of us, so don't.
Yeah, I will take a year. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Still got people joining us.
Yeah, we're up to 43.
Woo.
Yeah, nice.
And I have 4 more minutes, so don't want to start too early. Mary Beth, later at the end of the meeting, will you be able to give us a hint as to February's planned speaker?
Oh, absolutely.
Things can always change.
Yeah, we don't know if we're Zoom or in person, but we'll figure that out.
Well, Sam, we missed your birthday. Sorry, and you turned 40. My gosh, you don't look 40. You're doing well.
It's amazing how many of the new gray hairs that I see like every day.
Yeah.
And not just like on my head, but like in my ears and in
Yeah.
my nose.
And for a
It's real
while,
weird.
plucking works, but then you'd be bald.
Yeah.
Growing up stinks.
Yeah, and your kids aren't teenagers yet, and the gray sort of just shoots in. Especially when they start driving that car.
Sam, on the good side, growing up only happens on the outside of the body.
Ah, okay.
That's right.
I like that.
Between your ears stays the same.
That's a good way to
Yeah.
say it.
Elizabeth reminds me that I'm not a grown up frequently.
That's not a bad thing.
Nope.
Well, I look at those folks on TV that I know are my age and I think, all right, how much work has that person had done? You know, and I start pulling and they, okay, yeah, this
Yeah,
was
there you
done. They
go.
had this done. They had that done.
Yeah, and they have workout coaches and chefs to make all their food.
Yeah.
My nutritionist works at Whataburger.
That's not good.
Oh, goodness.
That's not good. Well, I'm gonna kind of count down here as we're up to 56 people and my clock says 6:59. So I'll try to drag it out until 7 before I start. I'll go ahead and hit the share screen so you guys get to look at, first you'll look at, oh, there it is. It's sharing, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, 7 o'clock. Hello, everybody. Our first meeting in 2022. We're back to Zoom for the near future, as I wrote there, and you can read it. If you're wondering why we're back to Zoom, turn on the TV on a news channel, not on Netflix, and you'll find out why we're back at Zoom. And we do hope to be in person soon. There's a possibility we'll be back in person in February. But definitely we want to be back in person for our March meeting, which will be the award ceremony. For those of you who are class of 2021 or are visitors, that's the meeting where we give the certificates to the newly certified folks. We're able to present milestone awards, which are things like 250, 500 hours, 1,000, 4,000 hours, and very rare and wonderful occasions, 10,000 hours, and also pins for completing 2021 and getting our 40 hours of volunteer work and 8 hours of advanced training. So that's, put that one on your calendar. We'd like to have that in person, and we'll keep you informed about February. I don't think we provide the treasurer's report very often at a meeting, but since one of my next announcements is for you guys to please pay your dues, I thought you might be interested in the fact that we do have a few dollars in our checking and savings accounts at Wells Fargo. And over the years, the board of directors for Cross Timbers have been very fiscally responsible with your dues and your training fees. And so we're solvent. We don't have to hold fundraisers just to raise funds. We can do it because it's interesting. And so that I just wanted everyone to know that we do have funds, but we do rely on your dues to cover several things. So here we are with my next announcement. Please pay your dues if you have not done so. Class of 2021, you have paid. So you can turn your ears off for a minute, as elementary school teachers sometimes say. On our website, if you scroll below where it says log your hours, there are 2 PayPal buttons. Try to hit the PayPal button that says pay your dues. And if you make a mistake for any reason, just let me know, and Chris Castoro, our treasurer, and by email, that's fine. We can make a correction if there's any mistake. If your dues are still $20, if you feel generous, please go ahead and click that button to pay $22. Excuse me, I keep saying that, to pay $22 to cover our PayPal costs. So, and we'd appreciate that. You can make a check to Cross Timbers Master Naturalist chapter for $20 and mail it to Chris. And possibly, Mary Beth, could you put Chris's address into chat there? I'll try to leave it up on screen long enough for you to catch it. If you mail something, I have become more skeptical about the US Postal Service in the last few years. So if you do mail that check in, please send Chris an email at treasurer@ctmn.org saying he should be expecting a check from you. Several people have already paid. I know quite a few people paid their dues at the holiday party. So let me know, Mary Beth, when you're ready for me to move off this screen.
Oh. You want me to put this in the chat?
Please.
Okay. That's fine. You can move.
Okay. And Mary Beth, will you tell me when our speaker has logged in?
She's here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll try to talk fast. We'll have several announcements, but I wanted to go ahead and make some of them now. The Tarrant Regional Water District and Native Plant Society are going to have a savage cabbage batch. Now, most of us know that cabbage by a different name, but because this is going to involve school kids, it was called savage cabbage instead of the other name. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google invasive cabbage and you'll find out what the other name is. Anyway, on February 26th, weather permitting, Joanne Collins and NPAT is going to be pulling up I'll just go ahead and say it, the bastard cabbage, and having kids work with that. And they've asked us to have a table for making seed balls. I am ready for that because I thought we would do that last fall. And if you would like to participate, now again, this is weather permitting. If it's freezing, then the event's postponed. You can contact me to say, yeah, I'd like to work with the group that's going to make seed balls. Joanne is also interested in volunteers who are willing to work with the students see, she wrote in that word. So there it is on the screen. Hope everybody's 18 or older. And then she is also working on a project called the 9 Natives Initiative, where several organizations would contribute ideas and somehow select a group of 9 native plants to highlight on city websites. And since this says city websites, I'm presuming that means it's not necessarily just Fort Worth, that it could, hopefully will include Arlington and several other cities in our jurisdiction here. So if you're interested in helping pull up that nasty cabbage or are interested in learning more about the 9 Natives Initiative, please talk to Joanne. And here's her email and her phone number. She may be on a little, Joanne, are you here now? She thought she'd have to be late. She may be here later at the end of the meeting and she might join in some more. And I know that we have 1 or 2 master naturalists who are willing to go out along the Trinity River trails and take photos of the invasive cabbage and put it on iNat. Do you think we might have some people that are interested in that? I sure hope so. And then you can even, you can be along the river trail, which means you can, for the most part, be on the sidewalk. You're not trying to, scrape your knees or anything, or risk your life on steep slopes or anything like that. So, and while Michelle is speaking, I'll post some of this information in chat. And let's do one more announcement if Melinda is ready. Unmute yourself there, Melinda, if you're ready. Going once, going twice. Oh, I heard something.
Just to say out loud, I just asked, is the cabbage edible?
I don't know. Does anyone know?
It's not a head-forming
This is-
cabbage. It's a member of the Brassica family and
Right.
not normally eaten.
Well, brassica, regular cabbage is brassica, but I think it's a different species.
This is-
Someone else was,
That type of cabbage, which is the first name we will not use. The
right?
savage cabbage flowers are edible. They don't taste especially good, but they are edible, just the flowers themselves. Okay.
And you'd need about 500 to make half a cup, right?
It'd be easier to pick dandelions. I make a dandelion jam that takes forever.
I thought we could start a restaurant here.
Could be, could be. Okay, since
Can you hear me? Can
I
anybody
can hear
me now?
you, I can hear you,
Oh,
Melinda.
good. I'm having
All right.
technical difficulties, but the announcement I was going to make is, a couple years ago, we were hoping to get a junior master naturalist program started, and we had a little bit of, we got some movement on it, and then of course COVID dashed our plans. So we had to kind of cancel everything for the time being. And now that we're hopefully in a different place with COVID, we would really like to make that happen. And our goal is to have some kind of junior master naturalist program this summer. So I wanted to make an announcement for anybody who's interested in helping out with that, and that could be teaching, because I know we have a lot of depth education-wise, lots of people with a lot of good knowledge that would be great for helping to teach, and anybody that would be willing to help develop curriculum or just help being there, as just being, friendly faces during the classes. We haven't quite set on a schedule yet or exactly what we're wanting to do, but we're hoping maybe to do a week-long summer camp, possibly. That's something that's been floated. So I would like to have a planning meeting within the next couple of weeks, because the sooner we start, the better our chances of getting this squared away by summer. So if anybody's interested, and I know I've had people in the past that were interested, and we worked with some people, but your situation may have changed. It's been a couple years. So if you're interested in helping, please send me an email at training@ctmn.org and let me know you're interested, and I'll put you in the loop. And I want to set up a Zoom here in the next couple of weeks to see, throw some ideas around and see who'd be interested in helping us out, get that going.
And that email does direct to several people. That's totally fine. But if you'd please make it clear, if you're sending Melinda an email, make it clear it's about the Junior Master Naturalist Program.
Yeah, I just put that in the title.
Subject line, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all I have, and hopefully we can make this happen this year finally.
Hope so. I'm going to stop sharing and hold the other announcements till after our speaker. Mary Beth,
Yes.
you're
We're
on.
all right. We are very pleased to have our own Fort Worthian Dr. Megan O'Connell speak to us tonight. She joined the Brit Conservation Research Team in the spring of 2021 after receiving her PhD from the University of Texas at Austin in plant biology. Megan is broadly interested in conservation, botany, ecology, pollination, and plant reproduction, the health of native plant communities, and how global change will impact ecosystems, function, and resilience. Megan is also passionate about citizen science and community-driven research, as well as science communication and media production. She is always excited to engage with researchers, community members, and artists to develop cross-disciplinary collaborations that engage broad audiences in conversations about conservation and the important roles plants play in our lives. She is also an advocate for diversity, representation, and equity in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and is working to develop research opportunities and programs aimed at diversifying the fields of ecology and conservation. I encourage you to check out her most excellent website, megano'connell.net. Megan is the epitome of a master naturalist, and we are so pleased to meet her and have us talk to you tonight. And I give you Megan. And I think—
Hello, everyone.
There you go.
Mary Beth, am I able to screen share?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Share away.
Okay. Uh-oh. Says I need to grant permission to my screen share. I'm sorry. I just recently switched to Mac.
Sharon, would you check and make sure yours shows all participants? I think we're co-hosts.
Okay.
If you click on share screen.
I have all participants.
Okay. What are you seeing, Megan?
It might be my actual, give me 1 second. This will be my first time presenting on my new laptop.
That's
so.
okay.
Oh.
It says that I need to, if you guys are trying to record me, that I need to quit and rejoin your call. So I will be right back.
I've got an announcement. I always have more announcements to make.
Okay, perfect. I'll be right back.
All right. Okay, next announcement. It would be a good time to update your VMS profile. This is for members. If you are a non-member, or if you're a sponsor, if you're a friend watching us, you get to ignore this announcement. If you don't know what VMS is yet, then you are so lucky. So folks that if you've changed your address, changed your, want a different phone number, particularly if you've changed your email, we need that information is in VMS. And so you will click in order to report your service, but instead of reporting your service, come down here below where it says edit my profile, click on that. That's 5 pages, but if you don't need to, I have done things where I've had to change 1 item, but I still have to click through and all 5 pages and approve it. So that would be really helpful for everybody. For everybody trying to contact you, if you would edit your profile. Also, I don't have a whole lot written here. Please record your hours. If you can record your hours within 30 days, that's so helpful to us. If you got behind, click on that report my service button on our website see what days you can report and put those in. It does matter. It does, it's not all about getting your, it's not all about getting recognized for your hours. There are other reasons that it's helpful to the chapter and to the state for you to record your hours. And
I think I'm ready when you are, Sharon.
all right, good. I like to stop eventually. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to PowerPoint. Okay.
Yay.
How's that looking?
Great.
Okay, so I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me, Mary Beth. I've already seen a few familiar faces, so some of these folks have heard me harp on a few of these subjects. So if you've already heard me talk a lot about pollinators and phenology, get ready, I'm going to talk about it some more. So Patrick Newman, the CEO of Fort Worth Botanic Garden and the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, let me know about this meeting and that you all had originally invited him to talk about native plants and our work with native plants as an organization. So we merged the gardens and the Research Institute in 2020. And so we're going through a really big transition as an organization. We're growing quite a bit, and there's going to be a lot of upcoming changes. So it's a really exciting time to come visit us. As Mary Beth said, I joined the staff back in April of 2021 as the new lead conservation research botanist. So I have a lot of exciting new native plant related work to share with you all. Okay. Okay. So who am I? As I mentioned, my name is Megan. I got my PhD at the University of Texas at Austin I finished in February 2021 and then joined the staff here at the Botanical Research Institute of Texas in April. My background as a researcher is diverse. My dissertation largely focused on plant pollinator interactions, pollinator conservation, conservation genetics. I do a lot of work related to global change, so land use and habitat destruction, as well as climate change. And I'm going to talk to you guys quite a bit about one of my passions, which is phenology, and I'll talk more about it. But I'm also a very avid science communicator. So I originally, I have an English degree in literature before I got my PhD, and I studied photojournalism. I taught middle school English. So I'm a storyteller at heart. And I think science is just a fascinating story space, especially conservation and the exciting things that are happening in this research world. So I spend quite a bit of my time on public engagement, working on getting this next generation of conservationists and botanists as passionate as you folks. And one thing that I'm going to be sharing with you all is that my interest in science communication kind of turned into a semi-professional filmmaking career that is somewhat become incorporated in my research. And so there's going to be ways for you all to get involved, and I'm pretty excited to share that with you guys. So just a roadmap of where we're going. I'm going to be talking first off about our really beautiful native garden space, or I'm going to highlight my favorite native garden space at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden and share a little bit of the history of that space and some fantastic work by our gardener who manages it. And then I'm going to dive into some more detail about the conservation research program that we're developing at the organization and kind of our 3 pillars that we are organizing ourselves around. We have we're growing a pretty robust seed banking and conservation horticulture program. And we're trying to do predictive, proactive conservation work, which is where the phenology and climate change parts come into the picture. And then I'm going to talk to you all about community conservation and how I'm trying to get as many people involved in conservation around here as possible. I also just wanted to give you all a heads up as master naturalist that there's going to be lots of talk about potential volunteer opportunities. And I've put some contact emails on the slides where I'm talking about this. So if someone wants to type those into the chat while they're up, and then we can share them. There's lots of cool things happening at the garden and with our conservation team and our seed lab. So there's going to be some cool opportunities available if you all are looking. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you guys. So when I first came to the organization, I was super enchanted with the fact that I got to work next door to the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. It's a really beautiful space, and it's changing and growing. And over the next couple of years, there's going to be a new master planning process that's going on. So it's just going to get better and better. I think I'll wait to talk about where conservation fits into that picture. But the one space that I think kind of sold this garden to me was the Tinsley Garden. There are prominent native garden space, and they have a really cool history. So the Victor and Cleon Tinsley Garden at Rock Springs is named so because originally this part of the Fort Worth Botanic Garden was actually a public park owned by the city of Fort Worth, and they called it Rock Springs City Park. And so this park is the oldest kind of historic part of the garden. It was the kind of the first somewhat botanic garden in Texas. Even before the Fort Worth Botanic Garden existed, this space existed as a park. And it's got a beautiful set of man-made springs that roll through it. So there used to originally be a spring in this park space, but as highways got built around, the highway 30 backs right up to the gardens. And when they installed these roads, it messed up the flow of the natural springs. And so they were recreated. The original park was a homestead, and they moved the home over to the Trinity Trail area. I don't know if anybody knows the house that I'm referring to. It's really just a rock's throw from the actual Botanical Research Institute of Texas building. So it's very close by. And it was turned into a city park in 1912, and then it was incorporated into the Fort Worth Botanic Garden in the 30s. So this is kind of what it looked like back when, so they had built these kind of man-made spring stone structures a really long time ago, and these stone structures are still intact in the garden. So this is what it looked like in, I'd say 2014 to 2015, when our managing gardener of this space, Zach Gomez, came on staff. This is kind of what he was handed, a very blank slate. And I don't know if anybody has spent time in the Tinsley Garden here, but if you can imagine, this was kind of an exciting space, I guess, to reimagine. That's what the springs and the pump house looked like. And it was just kind of a marshy, some of the spaces were a little bit boggy. And so Zach went to work with the goal of making it almost exclusively a native plant space, specifically with plants that are from North and Central Texas. And so over the last 6 years, he started out with a very small plant budget. So he populated this garden space mostly with plants that he went out and collected, with permission, of course, from private landowners, parks, green spaces, public lands. He cultivated them at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, and he grew the collection, I mean, hugely. It's incredibly impressive what he did, the amount of plants that he collected. At this point, in the 5-acre space that's designated for the Tinsley Garden, he's up to 175 native species as of his last count, which I think was a year ago. And the space is just, when you get there in the spring, incredibly lush. And it's really exciting for the conservation team because there's a lot of potential space for rearing some species of greatest conservation need in this space. It's a really amenable garden. You have some wetland spaces. You also have upland spaces and some grasses and woody species and things like that. So it's a really diverse 5 acres. So this is what it looked like after a few years into Zach's work. I think this picture was taken in 2017. So you see that those spring elements kind of reinvigorated and just a crazy diversity of plants. It has really turned out beautifully. And even at this point, the species composition is constantly changing. And it's this really fun, diverse, and to me, very unique looking space. What I think is important about this garden from a conservation standpoint is it showcases to visitors of the garden what their yards could look like if they went for more of a native wildscaping approach, that you can have a wildscaped yard without it looking out of control, that, you know, it's a really unique and special habitat that you can replicate in your yard. So Zach compiled his favorite plant list for the region. So if there's any interest in getting that plant list from him or volunteering at the Tinsley Gardens, there is this wooded space in the lowlands of the park that he's been doing a lot of invasive species management and trail work. And he could always use help with that, especially as we're prepping for the spring. So if you're interested in working with Zach, I know that the Fort Worth Botanic Garden has become an approved site, I think, to get Master Naturalist hours. So you can go ahead and email Zach, and he said he's happy to receive Master Naturalist volunteers. Okay, so getting on to my program. So I was hired on to grow the conservation research program. Kim Taylor, who some of you might know, had been at BRIT for almost a decade doing lots of rare and endangered species work. And when Kim was departing, they brought on another conservation researcher with the hopes that we would grow the program into lots of different kinds of conservation, not just rare and endangered species, but restoration, different kinds of research as well. So one of our kind of staples that the Botanical Research Institute of Texas has been engaging in for quite a while is seed banking, and we're going to grow into conservation horticulture. So right now we have a conservation seed lab, and it is home to several different seed accessions, which are just seed collections of rare and endangered plant species from different parts of Texas. As like the funding for seed banking, so some of you might have heard about the Millennium Seed Bank. There was a big push a little while back to kind of seed bank lots of different plant species from around the world, and it was a really popular trend to seed bank not too long ago, but that trend kind of subsided, and now we're working on making the seed bank just a consistent and kind of long-term slow building process. And so this year we were able to get some funding to do more concerted seed collection. So our collection has largely focused in the DFW area. Without large budgets, it's hard to travel across the state seed banking. It kind of speaks to the need for there to be some kind of unified effort across the state and a network of people working on this. We, unlike other states, we don't have a plant conservation alliance in the state. So a lot of states do, or a lot of regions do. And so I think part of our seed banking and plant rescue effort is going to involve developing a plant conservation alliance. I think that's going to make our efforts more even across the state. So there's I know of 3 other seed banks in the state of Texas. There's one at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center that's managed by Minette Marr. There's one at Mercer Botanic Garden run by, I believe, Anita Tiller, and then that's in Houston. And then the San Antonio Botanical Garden has one that is semi-operational. So it's something that really needs to be focused on in the state. And it's kind of, it seems like something that when I got here, it had lost support, or it had lost kind of cohesion and concerted effort. And so we're trying to regrow that, trying to build a more cohesive program that will allow different kinds of conservationists, master naturalists, and researchers to consistently collect seed year from year. It's not a problem that's going away. Rare and endangered species aren't going away, but you know, getting support to do this kind of work sometimes is harder than you think it might be. We're looking really not to just be collecting the seeds of these species. We're looking eventually to be able to grow these species for reintroduction. That's the ultimate goal. Storing these species, we don't actually, for many species, know how long they'll stay viable in storage. And so the goal isn't to just keep seeds in a freezer for a long, long time. The goal eventually is to do reintroduction work. And so part of our kind of big push is to develop a conservation horticulture program at BRIT. And that's going to be a part of the garden's master planning plan that's going to be kind of taking place over the next several years. We're going to be getting a designated conservation greenhouse where we can start doing much more of this rare and endangered species rearing, and collaborate with lots of different organizations around the state to do that really necessary reintroduction work. Right now, we have a seed lab facilitator. Her name is Erin Flinchbaugh, and she always has volunteer hours cleaning seed or coming on collecting trips. We're going to be doing a lot more of those trips in 2022. As I said, we got some support to be out in the field collecting more consistently. So we're really excited that we're going to be out doing that more. I also have another staff on my team, Rachel Carmichael, who is going to be facilitating conservation and rare and endangered species research projects. And so we have 2 of those projects going on. Basically, we're going to be in the field from March to September doing these kinds of things. So if there's ever a desire to get involved with this kind of work, these 2 contacts will be happy to connect you and work with you. They're both really awesome at what they do. Okay, so my research focus area, this is kind of an extension of work that I did during my dissertation at UT. I am particularly interested in this concept of phenology, which I'll explain in a second, and how global change like habitat destruction or land use change, as well as climate change, are impacting plant communities. So various kind of detrimental activities by humans are impacting the survivorship of native ecosystems and plant communities around Texas. So as I mentioned, climate change, urbanization, habitat loss. This makes plants more vulnerable to drought and more severe and frequent climatic extremes like that really intense freeze that we experienced last February. There's also evidence that plants and animals in response to climate change are starting to shift their ranges. So these species are starting to exist in places where they didn't used to, which is exposing them to novel communities of plants and animals, novel competitors. It's creating somewhat, you could think about it as new novel ecosystems that we haven't really seen before. This also results in trends like irregular phenology, and my next slide explains phenology more explicitly, which ultimately affects the reproduction of plants. So we're in a kind of a wild, wild west situation in regards to understanding how these factors are going to continue to impact native plant communities throughout Texas. And there's just kind of an endless need for people to be working on these issues. So my goal to kind of grow the conservation program at BRIT is to look at and investigate how vulnerable species in Texas are responding to these threats and what we can do about it. So phenology, from the dictionary definition, is just looking at cyclical and seasonal natural phenomenon in species. So for plants, you can think of the kind of annual reproductive cycle of plants. And my interest in phenology is looking at whether or not phenology of these species is changing depending on climate change or depending on alterations to their habitat, and then thinking about how that might impact plant communities down the line. So for me, this is very pertinent because it relates to pollination. Pollination is quite possibly one of my most favorite biological phenomena. Something like 80% of terrestrial plants depend on animal-mediated pollination to reproduce. So this very well-timed, evolved dance between pollinators and plants is responsible for helping something like 80% of the plant species that we know with being able to reproduce every year. So it's this really massively important process. But what's starting to become, I'll go here first. What's most important about this process from a conservation standpoint gets down to the genetic level. So within a pollen grain that is being carried around by a butterfly or a bee, there are sperm cells from a plant. And so pollen is really the movement of genetic diversity across landscapes. So animal-mediated pollination compared to something like wind pollination is a much more effective pollination process. So pollinators tend to be loyal to certain species of plants. And so different pollinators have different species of plants that they prefer to go to. And this provides some really targeted pollination services. So for example, monarch butterflies really prefer visiting milkweeds, and they're going to be most effective at transferring milkweed pollen compared to other pollinators, and especially compared to wind. And so this really specific and preferred pollen movement from conspecific to conspecific plants of the same species is what helps with the movement of genetic diversity or gene flow across landscapes. And it's critical for plant reproduction. Genetic diversity is critical for plants and animals to be able to adapt to novel environments and novel plant communities and things like that. So you can really think of pollination as just critically important to the future of plant communities. There's growing evidence that climate change is starting to affect when plants and pollinators are doing their thing. So my work involves looking at a pretty deep literature and growing literature of species that are changing their timing of flowering in response to climate change. And that's leading to something called phenological mismatches. So plants are starting to flower either too early or too late, and their pollinators aren't showing up at the right time. And really this has huge repercussions for plant reproduction. So that movement of pollen, that movement of genetic diversity is going to be ultimately impacted by the fact that these plants aren't being pollinated like they should be. There's growing concern in the conservation and ecological community that these phenological mismatches and alterations to pollination services might be one of the biggest threats facing global biodiversity today. I know that that's not something that's often on people's radar, but we're hoping more people think about this into the future. So studying phenology is not the easiest endeavor. It involves showing up to the field every single day, tracking certain plants. During my dissertation, I worked with this lovely plant called Miconia affinis in Panama, and it flowers for 2 days a year, every year. That's it. It flowers for 2 days and then it just goes into a fruit production stage. So getting your timing right, being in the field at the right time is very labor intensive. And the year that I was particularly looking at phenology in this plant, was an El Nino year. And so the phenology of a lot of plants was thrown off. This plant basically flowered 2 weeks later than you would have expected it to. And it gave me a lot of stress trying to show up at the right time every day. So I was working in field sites all up and down the Panama Canal. So, you know, get up at 3 a.m. to drive to a field site 2 hours away, get there, see if it's flowering, go to the next field site 2 hours away, see if it's flowering. Different populations might flower at different times. You basically have to be like 10 people at the same time to get significant amounts of phenological data across different sites. So I really started wondering if there's more efficient ways for me to be collecting phenological data after this incredibly stressful 2016 field season. And that's where my filmmaking and camera skills kind of started coming into play. So towards the end of my graduate studies, I started working with time-lapse imagery I wanted to illustrate how plants grow and how the time scale that plants do their activities isn't quite the same time scale as a human attention span. So people don't really have a lot of patience for waiting for the daisies to grow. But if you take time-lapse images and you compress months of plant activity into a minute, it becomes really clear that plant communities are these incredibly vivacious and active and constantly changing groups of species. So I did, and I think it might be the next slide. I hope it's the next slide. I'm going to show you one of my time-lapse videos that I created at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in 2019. But my goal and kind of what I discovered is you can put these remote time-lapse camera units. They look kind of like game cameras. There's one in this image. And you put it out in the prairie on a tripod that you stake into the ground. And it's in this weatherproof box. And there's a camera and a solar panel on top. And these cameras are self-powering. They're weatherproof. And you can set settings from an app that tells the camera to take a picture every day. And so you can leave these cameras out in the field for months, and they can be collecting phenological data, taking plant community data for you every day. And then they upload these images to cloud storage. And so you can start to process the data from these images remotely from your computer or from your phone. And you don't have to be in 20 field sites every day at the same time. So I started playing around with these cameras. And I think my goal is I'm going to show you a pilot study that I'm working on this spring, but my goal is to grow a network of phenological observation cameras across different kinds of ecosystems in Texas to get a sense of how these different plant communities and species are responding to climate change. I think it's going to definitely inform a lot of our conservation priorities. To know that certain species might be more or less sensitive to climate change is definitely going to alert us to maybe we need to focus in certain areas. I also think that it's data that I would like to turn into useful tools for land managers and for regenerative agriculture practitioners. There's a lot of really beneficial information contained in these photos. You can get just tons of information about plant community dynamics, as well as the phenology of individual plant species. From a ranching perspective, you can look at all sorts of different factors, including forage growth rates. So there's just a lot of really beneficial information that can come from data collection like this. Okay, actually, I will show you the video on the next slide. So the pilot study I'm working on is in collaboration with several regenerative ranchers up here in the Fort Worth Prairie region. So to the west of the Cross Timbers. It shares some species with the Blackland Prairie, but the Fort Worth Prairie doesn't extend nearly as far south as the Blackland Prairie. And what we're doing is we're installing these time-lapse cameras in several pastures, they're prairie pastures, where the ranchers practice regenerative rotational grazing. So these particular ranchers are interested in how do I enable my prairies to grow to their ecological apex and still be able to graze in them. So they're very conservation focused ranchers. And they're really interested in if we can use this phenological information to better time their practices so that they can conserve for certain species. So as I mentioned, going out to the field to collect phenological data every day is really labor intensive, and it's definitely too labor intensive for a ranch manager. But if they can get on their phone and look at an image, or if they can go to a database and quickly look up what might be flowering in their prairie at a given time, it may tell them now is a time that you can graze, or no, if you want to conserve for monarchs, now's not the time because the milkweed is about to go to seed, things like that. So I think one of my goals is initially just to start getting this phenological network set up, and how we can start measuring in these really prevalent ecosystems. So ranches are very dominant in the landscape around here. And more of them, I think, could become prairie conservation spaces. The Fort Worth Prairie itself, much like the Blackland Prairie, is incredibly developed. There's not very much intact Fort Worth Prairie left. So getting more and more ranchers on board with restoring prairie and doing something more along the lines of rotational regenerative grazing is going to be necessary for us to make big conservation impacts in this region. And so giving them tools to make this kind of work easier for them. So the less work they have to do to conserve species, the better for them. That's kind of my goal. And the other thing that I really want to develop out of this is an opportunity to get the public and various citizen scientists involved in conservation. I think a lot of people want to do something about conservation, and they want to be involved in conservation research, but they aren't shown very many opportunities and real concrete ways to contribute. And so I'm hoping to turn this kind of pilot study into a concrete way to get as many community members engaged in the data collection process as possible. So this is a time lapse that I made at the Wildflower Center in 2019. This is about 3 months of flowering squished into a minute and a half. And you can just see kind of the way that the plants are slowly going through their reproductive phases. And you can see the shift in which species become dominant species at any given time. And so I think this is a really cool tool. It always seems to get people very engaged. A lot of people don't realize that plants are so active and that they move. They don't really observe these changes in real time. It's hard to. And so this has been kind of an exciting development that we can get people to collect data from these images for us. And I'm going to show you a few of the ways that we're going to be doing that. So I very much believe in community conservation practices. So how do we get community members to become engaged in a conversation or a dialogue rather than us as conservationists coming to landowners and telling them what to do? We want to have a dialogue with them about what they're excited about, what they want to do, how they want to contribute. And we hope that we can have those kinds of conversations with all sorts of different community members. I think that there's fabulous groups of people who are already interested in these issues. For example, you all are very, very invested in these conservation issues, but I would love to get all of Fort Worth's high school students helping me collect this data. I want to get people at the Fort Worth Stock Show who aren't normally thinking about conservation to be thinking about these issues and to help me collect this data. And there's a lot of exciting ways that I think we can do that. One of these ways is through an online platform that I have been working on with my collaborators. So some of you may have already engaged with Zooniverse and Notes from Nature from a transcription point of view. So the Botanical Research Institute of Texas has a really extensive herbarium, and there's a lot of volunteer work that happens going in and reading the labels off of all these really old and interesting herbarium specimens. this platform can also be used to score the phenology of these specimens. So unfortunately, when people when they digitize these specimens, whether or not they're in flower or in fruit is not included in that data. And so we're going to have lots of people. Hopefully, we're going to be getting lots of high school students and college students involved in helping us score the phenology of these specimens. We're also going to be using this platform to score iNaturalist images. So you can look at images and basically say, is it in flower? Yes or no. Is it in fruit? Yes or no. There's going to be some training. One of the things that's really good about these kinds of platforms, and I get the question, well, how do you know this data is going to be accurate? What these platforms do is they have multiple participants score the same specimen so that we can kind of arrive at an average or more precise measure, so that we know that there's not someone just kind of randomly clicking through. We're going to grow from this platform as well. So we're in the process of developing curricula and developing interpretive signage and kind of displays at the gardens related to phenology and community science. And the real goal is to create some kind of interactive mobile display where we can take this data processing experience, make it really interactive and exciting, and take it to various places and get lots of different community members engaged in doing this, and people who don't normally have access to these opportunities to get them involved as well. So as of right now, if you are looking for virtual volunteer opportunities, we are about to launch our phenological scoring online project. So I guess, I don't know if I reach out through Mary Beth, but I can send an email out to everybody when the platform is up and ready. And basically you would come through the Brit volunteer program. So you would just register as a volunteer, and then you can kind of start scoring away and helping us get this huge plethora of phenological data that we're going to need from these databases. So having this historic information is going to be really important so that we have a point of comparison for these images that we're going to be collecting with our network. We really hope that we can kind of reconstruct long-term data sets where we can look comparatively through time as to how some of these species might be changing compared to the historic phenology. Also, the cameras and that pilot study are going to be going up in March. So we're going to be installing cameras at 3 different regenerative ranches in the Fort Worth Prairie region. So in and around the LBJ grasslands is where a lot of these ranches will be located. We're going to be coupling the camera observations. I'm going to be working with the range management program at Texas Christian University, and their students are going to be helping me collect grazing intensity information using remote sensing drones. And then we're also going to be doing some on the ground pollinator surveys that are going to be coupled with this phenological information. Then in the fall, there's going to be a big push on our part to start scoring the images from these cameras. So right now we're working on scoring the herbarium specimens, iNaturalist specimens, kind of that historic or contemporary data. And then we're going to roll into that annual data that we're trying to collect from these cameras. So if you're interested in these virtual volunteer opportunities, my email's here. With that, I'm going to say thank you for letting me speak. And if anybody is interested, please don't hesitate to reach out, and whatever questions you have, I'm happy to answer.
I have a few questions from a little earlier in your talk. You talked about the seed bank and developing a program that would include genetically informed feed bulking. What does genetically informed mean?
So I'll give you an example. We have a species called Salvia penstamoides where there are very few documented populations left in the wild. And so it's ongoing research, but a lot of evidence that would point to the fact that these species are not very genetically diverse anymore. So they're really inbred in their small populations because they can't exchange genetic information with other populations. And so if you are to collect seed from one population and then reintroduce it in the same spot, you're not really enhancing the genetic diversity of this species. You're not really helping it get the genetic exchange and outcrossing that it needs. And so what you need to do is know genetically how distinct different populations are from one another, and make sure that when you're reintroducing the plant, you're doing it in an intentional way for promoting genetic exchange.
A lot like the zoos are doing now with animals.
And one of the issues that we face is that certain native seed producers are by all means doing the right thing because they are working on spreading native seed, but sometimes they source a species from one population and they bulk tons and tons of bulking, meaning they grow plants until they produce more seed. And it's all genetically identical. And then that genetically identical seed goes across the state, and it's not necessarily helping promote genetic diversity. And so the hope is that we can start working with these groups of producers, and depending on what species we're working with, we can work to diversify the seed that is going about the state.
Cool. Do you, back possibly when you were working in Panama, and now, do you ever have to worry about theft or vandalism of those cameras that are kind of expensive?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I haven't put those cameras up on public property yet. So they're generally either on private land or in garden spaces that are, behind a locked gate. I have had people talk to me about, like, we need to put these cameras up at this prairie and this reserve and all these. And I'm like, absolutely, we do. But figuring out where to install them, like if there's a way to climb up into a tree and secure it high enough up that someone can't steal it, like there's a potential for that. And that's definitely something that I will have to work on and grow. So right now, my immediate solution has been, that these cameras are in fairly safe spaces.
Right. Were you able to do that in Panama?
I didn't do this in Panama yet.
Oh, okay.
So in Panama was where I was like, this needs to change. I can't keep running. I can't keep running around to these field sites. I'm gonna lose my mind.
Right.
So when I got back from doing my field work in Panama, I started experimenting with these cameras at the Wildflower Center.
Okay. So next time you go, you'll be.
Yeah, right now I'm focused on Texas for the next time being. So it might be a while. I'll be back in Panama in February for a wedding, but not to do field work.
We have several questions about being able to help you and do some of this plant scoring. Will you provide training for those of us who are not professionals?
Absolutely. Yes.
So we don't have to be a professional in order to do the scoring.
No. And I think, it's definitely going to be a learning process for all of us. There's going to be certain species that come up that are just going to be problematic. And there's going to be, opportunities through the platform for people to put notes as to whether or not, for example, if there's a flower structure and you're not sure if that's a seed or a flower, that's all going to be recorded. And I think part of this process is the recognition that getting lots and lots of different community members involved is going to require work in and of itself. There's going to be a perfection of the protocol in that process. And I'm the kind of scientist that cares, and not, the conservation is really important, but I also think getting more people to care through experiential work like this is equally important. we can't save these species if there's a bunch of people in the community who don't even know that they exist.
Right.
So I'm fully aware that it's going to be a labor of love, getting lots and lots of different people involved. But I'm ready, and I think yes, there will be trainings, there will be workshops, lots of interfacing and communication with volunteers. I'm trying to bring on a part-time staff just to manage that aspect of the project. So I'm getting geared up for you volunteers.
Good, because we want to learn it and we want to help you. So that's great.
Yeah.
I have another question. Can you discuss in more detail the virtual phenology scoring? And Dana, if you want to unmute, and if Megan needs any elaboration from what exactly you're asking, feel free to unmute.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, what it would entail. You look at an image virtually and you're looking for specific features, or I'm just wondering how exactly it works.
Yeah. So in the training, you'll learn how to navigate the platform. So Zooniverse is a website, and they've developed this website specifically for community and citizen scientists to be able to collect data from images. And so when I get the training going, and when you guys kind of get set up as volunteers, you'll get this website and you'll go to it and you'll log in, and you'll be prompted to look at an image, and there will be a sidebar where it asks specific questions about that image. And so it'll ask you, are there flowers on the specimen? And you'll say yes or no. Or is there a fruit? And there'll be yes or no. And there will also be a guide that if you're not sure if it's a flower structure, or if you're not sure it's a fruit structure, there will be kind of more depthful resources where you can kind of go and check for certain features. And then your data will be combined with several other people's observations, so that there's quite a bit more confidence as to it being an accurate measure or not. So right now, our platform, we mostly have a herbarium specimen up, and that it can be tricky because some of those specimens, when they're flattened and dried for 50 years, it's kind of hard to tell what some of those things are. But we're going to be slowly adding in a lot of iNaturalist images. So if you have your permissions, by the way, if you have your permissions on your iNaturalists, you haven't really looked into the permissions. What you could do, as Sam is suggesting, is you can actually notate when you enter your iNaturalist observation, whether the species was in flower or fruit. So there is a prompt, I think, with iNaturalist where you can enter that. But for observations that you've done in the past where you didn't, there's a lot of people who haven't entered that information with their iNaturalist observations. And so we're going to be going back, and for all of the publicly available iNaturalist observations, we're going to be collecting that data there as well. So it's going to be a lot of images. There's thousands of images that y'all have been out there documenting, and I encourage you to continue documenting. So if you wonder if this iNaturalist data goes anywhere, it is used constantly by conservation researchers, ecologists. We find a lot of plant populations through your guys' hard work and documenting. And so I encourage you to keep observing on iNaturalist as much as possible. It helps us enormously. The 3 types of images you'll eventually be scoring are the herbarium specimen, then the iNaturalist images, and then the camera images that we'll be collecting this spring. I'm hoping that it's not just something virtual too. I'm hoping to grow it into something that, we can take group phenology trips. I know that Sam Kirshnick, who's here, is super into community science and phenology as well. And so hopefully getting together just some phenology trips when we're all allowed to be around each other again, I think would be incredibly helpful.
Cool. Someone has mentioned, let me see, and you may know about this group, the James E. Budd Smith Plant Materials Center. Makes me wonder if this Bud Smith was named for a plant bud. And have you heard of them? They're collecting seeds to document diversity.
No, who commented on that? And can you tell
Cynthia,
me
would
more?
you unmute yourself, please, Cynthia?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
I got a note, it was a little bit more than a year ago, to see if I had a plant population of, you know, they had a list of plants. And so I sent them some seeds. I've got I'm a gardener, and I have an area on 13.5 acres that's not been overseeded with any seeds from anywhere else. And I had some plant population, so I sent them a few seeds. I just didn't know. In fact, I can pull up the email and send it to you if you like.
And are they based in Texas?
I don't know. It's been so long ago. I have to.
Yeah,
look
please
it up
do.
again.
Please do email me that. I'm interested.
Okay, I'll look it up, and I'll see what I can find. I'll try to put it on the chat before you off, and then you can look at it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Someone else, Alyssa Giliberto or Giliberto, wondered if you've been able to talk to the owners of Burgundy Pasture Beef in Grandview to see if they would allow a camera on their land. Burgundy Pasture Beef. Alyssa, you go ahead and elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so I worked with in grad school I worked at the Institute of Ranch Management and as a grad assistant, and Burgundy Pasture Beef has a ranch in Grandview, and I forget how many acres it is. I want to say it's like close to 100, and they do rotational grazing. It's grass-fed beef. And we studied plant biodiversity and like forage production from a cattle perspective. Like they have something called the Living Laboratory.
It's John Taggart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be on that property.
Okay. I was
Hey,
like,
great.
they already have a game cam out there that we set up, and like the weather station and everything. That
we're with Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get that up and running again.
Okay, cool. I figured, but I was like, I'll just mention it.
Yes, absolutely. John is awesome. He is such a good advocate for how this all works and how you can have these immensely beautiful prairies on your working lands. So he's a real asset to the community.
He is.
We have a member wondering what counties you're working in, Megan, and I'm asking her to tell us what county she's in, because of course I imagine she's in Johnson County.
I am really terrible at the Texas counties. There are a lot of counties. So Fort Worth Prairie is north of us and runs down through us and not far south. Is Johnson south of
Johnson?
Tarrant?
Is the adjacent South County.
Yes. So the
Forgive
Fort
me,
Worth Prairie extends into Johnson. Yes.
Okay.
I am just inside the Johnson County line. I could almost spit on Tarrant County.
Okay. Yeah. So right now, the first 3 ranches I'm working with are up around the LBJ grasslands. And the hope is to grow. And so if you know of folks in Johnson County who might be amenable to this kind of work, I'd be very interested in those connections.
Including yourself, Crystal.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, that's on the agenda for this year, to bring out biologists and do this. So yes, Megan, I got your email. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Any other questions, folks?
Johnson County.
Private ranch?
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
you're saying
yeah.
private ranches is your preference right now.
Right now, yes. Hopefully
And that's
we'll be able to
totally understandable.
So yes, Texas is 97% private. So I'm going to be working on a lot of private ranches. Valerie, if you can get my email and contact me, awesome. Did you have any other questions, Sharon?
I don't see any others.
James E. Bud Smith. Is there a way to save the chat?
No.
I think I want to
I can send it to you.
That would be awesome, because
Okay.
I think people have been posting some useful information in the chat. Oh goodness. And Sam said there's only 2 million plus observations of plants that we need to score the phenology for. So
Yes,
thanks,
Sam
Sam.
also sent us to a video you made in Bayou City, I believe it's called. So,
Well, Sam, we have to give credit to Olivia Hahn, who's the media specialist with Texas Parks and Wildlife. That was really her brainchild.
On
But
your
thanks.
On your question about the chat saving, if you go to the chat,
Okay.
up, there's 3 little dots at the bottom.
Save chat. Beautiful.
see, I learn something new every time I'm on Zoom.
Awesome. Perfect.
Great.
And please, my email is in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'm very engaged, and I want to get lots of volunteers involved in our program. And I love collaborating with landowners and ranchers and creatives. So please, any kind of collaboration, send it my way.
Hey, thank you so much. And this sounds great. It sounds very exciting to me. We do have a few members who are already participating in the herbarium specimens. And I'll see if I can get 1 or 2 of them to write something for our group to say, you can learn this, and you don't, to sort of promote it again. Some of us want to be outdoors all the time, but then we get something like a hip replacement and we have to stay indoors for a month or 2. So,
And I mean, with the current situation, we're all having to think of creative ways to interact with each other. I think one of the things that maybe can drive home the importance of this. So to connect there's so much need for phenological information, even just when it comes to our seed bank. We don't exactly know when these species, all 400 plus species of greatest conservation need, are in flower and in fruit at any given time, depending on what county we're in. So getting all of that information kind of organized into a centralized database is gonna really move conservation in Texas forward. And so you're gonna be making some really big contributions to the work that we do.
I also am thinking a few years forward from now. I know there's quite a few folks that are listening today and have connections to others like the Native Plant Society or the Native Prairies, who if you're ready for folks to start growing these plants, they're going to be ready to do it.
Yes,
So.
There's been lots of conversation about, as we grow that Texas Plant Conservation Alliance, that we're going to have a network of people who are capable and ready for helping us with those efforts. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. I'm exiting full screen now. All right, I'm going back to my boring screen, y'all. Sorry, not quite as much fun as or as interesting as Megan's. Another announcement that we were asked to make is that there's going to be the annual backyard bird count. It's February 18th through 21st. And here's the website, and I've heard of it and I've seen links to it, but I have never clicked on it. Is anyone online right now who could tell us a little bit more about that bird count? Please unmute yourself and chirp in.
They do 4 days of backyard birding. It doesn't have to be your backyard. You can go somewhere else and do it. And it's however long you want to do it. and you report each day individually. It's over the President's Day holidays. So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday in February. And it's really fun, easy enough. Marshall could do it when he was feeling terrible. And a great way to get some hours. Put the hint, start putting feed in your feeders a couple weeks before, so the birds will be coming.
Good idea. Thank you,
I'd
Fonzie.
like, this is Jim Freisinger. I'd like to add that we have a community great backyard bird count out the Southwest Nature Preserve in Arlington, now the Sherry Bird Nature Preserve. It's 8 to 10 o'clock on Saturday, the 19th, and anyone is welcome to join us for a group great backyard bird count.
Is that the 19th of February?
Correct.
Right.
8 to 10. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Did Joanne make it to the meeting to talk about those cabbages we all can't stand? All right. Well, she'll make it next time, I'm sure. She's going to be sorry she missed this meeting. This was awesome. And anyway, just awesome. Mary Beth, can you give us a brief preview of who's planned to be our February speaker?
Yes, that will be on February 21st. City Councilman Jared Williams, who serves District 6, which is Southwest and South Fort Worth. And I know that's Sharon's district.
Yes.
Jared Williams has a doctorate in environmental science and science education from the University of North Texas. And we are lucky to have a city councilman who is involved with the environment, water conservation, smarter waste management. He's going to talk to us about land conservation and prairies in Fort Worth.
Great. And I think he's been involved with that open spaces program. And one of my friends has had him out at our neighborhood park and said, we need city park. We need some improvements here. So
nice.
He agreed. He agreed that the park needed some improvement. And I don't necessarily mean concrete. I don't mean that. All right. Any other announcements? Questions? I'm a teacher, so I'm okay with dead space. Yes, thank you again, Megan. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, we are working on a newsletter and miracle of miracles. It's almost ready. I know of one correction that needs to be made. So we're hoping that you'll see a January newsletter within the next week and a February newsletter as soon after that as possible. If you're interested in making a contribution to the newsletter, the email is newsletter@ctmn.org. And we'd love to have photos. We do, do tell us who took the photo. We'd love to have articles and because that makes it fun. All right, thank you. And I guess the meeting is adjourned. Thanks a lot. Go watch football.
Night, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.